What's up, guys? So today is a very special day here at Szabo's Arcades. We have a special delivery today from my UPS man. So today we're going to look at the new MVSX NEO GEO by UNICO 3/4 scale bar top that's comparable in size to the Arcade 1-Up and the Legends. With a base, it'll be 57 inches. Without a base, I believe it's 25 inches. What's cool and unique about this is that you can just set it on the counter and it's more mobile. It will probably, I'm assuming, come assembled already, so you have to consider there will be no assembly. Now, if you do get the base, you will do some assembly to that, but I'm sure that's going to be extremely easy. It's 4 sides, it's hollow, it's not rocket science to put that thing together. And all these machines, all out there today, are very simple to put together. They're dowels, screws on the sides, very, very simple. So what we're going to do today, we're going to look at the NEO GEO MVSX. We're going to look at the game selection on there. There's 50 games total. We're going to look at the build of the game. I want to go over the materials that are used on this machine and the other ones on the market versus the old arcades, as you see behind me. The different materials that were used, we're going to go over some of them today. We're going to do some gameplay. I'm actually going to have my wife, my beautiful bride, I'm going to let her come in, and I didn't even let her touch this thing yet. So I'm going to let her come in, and we're going to get a first-hand look at someone that's, I would say, a casual gamer. I want to get her point of view, trying to navigate the menu, trying to play the games, getting her feedback on how she feels the controls are. Again, she plays games in here, but she's not like super diehard, so it's going to be a good view, a perspective to see how she thinks and what she feels of it. Now, she's not going to be biased to this either way. I'm just trying to bring her in so people can see it's not going to be like a scripted thing. I just want to see, her reaction. So I think that'll be kind of exciting to see a different point of view, not a heavy gamer. So let's get started on this review and let's go. Alright guys, MVSX multi-video system by UNICO. This is the 1-Up competitor and the Legend competitor. Alright, so right off the bat, we have our power supply. This is going to be basically the same thing as all the 3/4 scale machines. Plug this in the back, 110 into the wall. You're golden. Nicely packaged. All right, let's see what we got. Put this to the side. It's all wrapped. I don't know, what's this? Multiple marquees. We'll look at that in a minute. And I'm gonna pull this baby out of here. All right, so let's take it off. I like already the color. The red is nice. A nice touch that they did here is having these plugs covering the screws. That's a nice touch. There's the back. We have power supply. You turn it on and off here. Here's a USB port, and then your power. Now with the USB, I know there's already been some updates on the firmware for the Violence, so there's probably going to be some other updates in the future, I'm sure, for the system itself. So let's take a look. Whoa, now that's different. I don't know what the deal is with this Marquee. Hold on, where's the box at? Let's take a look at this box. That's not the same Marquee. That just had 1, 2, 3, 4 and MVS, and this is completely different. This is a Play Neo Geo from SNK, a McDonald's, and then these have King of Fighters and Metal Slug. So I'm not sure what the story is behind that. I'll tell you what the story is. So the story is, this is my own creation that I've done already, because I knew, I've had numerous people through the years ask me to make this Ronald McDonald Marquee. So back, I would say in the 90s on the West Coast, McDonald's made a deal with Neo Geo where they put the mini Neo Geo cabinets in locations in McDonald's, and they had this Marquee. Now obviously it was for the small Neo Geo cabinets, the minis. So I thought it was appropriate to put it on here. And another thing that's really cool and unique about this one specific item is this is getting set to, I believe, 5 total YouTube guys, different channels, and we're all signing it. So far, right now what we have the first guy that saw it was Retro Ralph, and he signed it. Then we got Justin from Console Kits, he signed it. When I'm done, I'm gonna be signing it, and then there's gonna be 2 more guys that are gonna be signing it after that. All the proceeds from the auction, they're gonna go to Children's Mercy Hospital in Kansas City, which is a really nice thing that they're doing, and I'm really honored to be a part of this. So without further ado, guys, let's get this plugged in. And for the first thing, I'm gonna let my wife, she's going to get her little hands on this, and we're gonna get her feedback on what she thinks.
Hi everybody, this is Krista, Joe's wife. So I had an opportunity to help out Joe with this project. He let me sit down and play this machine, so the MVSX. Now, Neo Geo is not something that I played when I was a kid, so I didn't have a lot of background information on the games. So one of the things I noticed right away when I sat down and looked at the machine is I knew that Joe was going to appreciate the color of the cabinet. As we've been working and I've been learning more and more about arcades, I've noticed his attention to detail for little things like the colors of the machines, how accurate is artwork. So I picked up on that right away, that if you look at the control panel and if you look at the colors of the machines, I really enjoyed seeing that. Now, the navigation of the system for me was fairly easy, and as I mentioned, I am not an avid game player, so I have had the opportunity to play many games that he has in our arcade, but typically he sets them up for me. So for me, getting through this machine was fairly easy. I was able to see what collections were available to play, how many games were in each collection, and how you get in and out of the games. Doing the coin select was a little challenging for me. So some things I noticed is that when I was looking at the machine and when I was playing and seeing Joe play, that the monitor at all angles was really clear. It wasn't washed out. When we went back into the settings, I was able to see that you could select and put the scan lines on it. So when you look at the old arcade machines, especially the ones that Joe has, you know, it had that option that you could put the scan lines in it, so it was like the CRT. But if you're somebody that doesn't like that, you could also remove that and it would just be that crystal clear monitor, which is like the new modern look. So playing the games, you know, there was really no jumping in the games, and when I would hit the buttons, I noticed things like, you know, there wasn't a delay in games. So you hit like the A button and then you're like, oh, I jumped, but I didn't jump. And so no, those things weren't happening. So, you know, it was a really smooth playing game. And, you know, some people think it's important to know what the sound is like. So it was pretty loud for that small little machine, right? Now I turn it down because I like things a little bit more calm, but other people might like to have it nice and loud. So that option is there. You can turn up that volume. One of the things I also really enjoyed about this cabinet is that this is going to the community. And for me, just knowing that this company is working with their communities, that's important to me. So the gameplay was great, but I also really enjoyed that community involvement.
Your rate symbol. What's this? What's the setting? Is that settings?
So we have, go back up. We have language, so you can select your language. You have, go down. Game mode, here's the MVS versus AES. MVS, which is on now, takes credits as you saw, which is the arcade. The AES is a console version, which would not take credits. Go down or back to game image. So this is where you can turn on and off scan lines. I've experienced with this, and the pixel scan line for myself I like the best. The smoothing kind of smooths the pixels out. I'm not a huge fan, not many people are. To me, this is the closest to a CRT arcade. And then this is the firmware version that it is right now. And then if you had an issue with, because you could change your inputs on your controls and stuff, and if you screwed up, you could go back to factory settings. And then this up front, this is just a faux coin door. It actually is raised. It has zero functionality other than just cosmetics. Now, the one problem that I have with this, myself personally, is it's scaled to nothing. Like, it's not scaled to, I think it would look better, if anything, if it was just one actual size quarter. Like if you took one of these small little things and made it this whole one, that would have looked more unique. Even if you couldn't put, and actually would have been even cooler, is if you turned this into a bank and you could just put quarters in and let kids just save money, or just do away with it completely. Now, one of the things that I'm going to be offering, I'm going to show you here. Alright, so in the real Neo Geo cabinets, we sell these. There's two different sizes depending on the cabinet. I think that one of these scaled down slightly would actually look pretty good on here. Not quite this size though. Now, what would even be cooler, this is a mod that somebody could potentially do, is if you actually did rig up headphone jacks so that you could plug this in and then have your own headset in. That would be kind of a cool feature. And then this would just be a dummy slot because there is no memory card. So that's something that I think could be done on the front. Now, the only issue is you can't just take this off because it looks like, obviously I'm not going to be prying on this now, it looks like this panel is actually cut around this. So you're actually going to have a void here, only of this thickness. But if I made this out of some type of plate, then it wouldn't matter and it can go over top of that. So that's something to consider. Here we have the speakers. These are 2-inch speakers. They're slightly underwhelming. They have good quality sound as far as clarity, but there's just no low end. So that is probably one of the things that is not super great about the cabinet, but you got to consider the form factor and where it is. If you got really high-end 2-inch speakers, I'm sure you could probably get a little more low end out of it. I know there was talk about trying to put speakers up here, but if you look at the way this cabinet is, you would 100% get casted shadows in the Marquee if you tried to do that. So that's probably not going to work. And I'd say about right here is the support on the back side where the LED lights are. So it's not like it's way back here that you could have it. It's literally almost in the center here. So it would really break up. At the end of the day, you would have no more room. I mean, if you wanted just the sound to be in a different place, they still ain't gonna be any larger than 2 inches. And the base of the back of the speaker would be sticking up. So you're gonna get shadows on both sides. So I don't know that that's really a good alternative. I think that just a better quality here would be the best. You could have it on the top, but I feel like even that would be even less effective because now it's just going straight up. Now if they were like double the size of this, maybe that would compensate the difference. That would have to be something experimented with. So let's look at the control panel. The control panel is actually reverse printed acrylic, which is really nice. One huge advantage that they did here over the 1-Up is the arcade 1-Up has a print, and then they have the clear acrylic, which the clear acrylic on the first version was like a second thought because people were having issues with the printer, you know, the ink's wearing off. So they came out with a solution, but the issue is it looked like a solution. The clear plastic always went around the outside. Now I get for version 1 that they did that, but I'm not sure why they continued that process through the newer cabinets that came out. This looks much cleaner underneath. Now on other review units you might see out there, this looks hazed over, and I'm going to show you here. So let's compare. This is an original Neo Geo control panel, and you see how this looks dull right now because it has a protective clear over this. So probably if you saw some other videos of YouTube guys doing it, they probably didn't remove this so it looked flat, but you can see this has a high gloss. Same with the bezel. I feel that unless you were to have removed that, this was removed when I got it, so it looks much cleaner and glossy. This would be the finished product. What's cool is if you feel right here, like normally this plastic is setting on top of the panel, but they made this so that this panel ends up being flush with this, which I really like that. So basically this is recessed in a point that it ends up being flush. That is a really nice touch. Now one of the most difficult things about trying to remake this front piece is this radius right here. So if you took a piece of any kind of panel and you tried to CNC route this or use a router bit to smooth this over, this is going to be a raw edge. And if you paint that, it's never going to match the texture of this panel. But with the way they were able to do it, this is all continuous right around, and that's pretty impressive how they got that to be around that corner like that. So that's a nice little touch. As far as the edging, this is the same thing as the 1-Ups have. This is like almost like a Formica, a very thin adhesive. I don't want to call it tape because it's much more rigid than tape is, but it's like the same texture. It's like Formica but in a tape form, and that's put on here on the edges, and it just it eliminates the MDF edge that you would see. There's nothing wrong with this. At this size you really don't need T-molding because this isn't in an area that's going to get really that heavily abused. So this could take a little bit of a beating and it's fine. So For this to not have a T-molding, I don't think is a problem. I mean, could you upgrade that? You could. The risk is you would have to completely disassemble the side cabinets. You'd want to completely cover the sides with like a masking tape so that when you're dragging your router across, you're not going to be scratching the vinyl, because then you would just destroy the side art. So if you really were anal and wanted to have T-molding, that would be the process that you would have to do. As far as the Marquee, I like what they did here. If you can see, there's absolutely zero bleed, and that's because the cabinet is designed so there is no molding here or here. So basically there is a slot all the way around. So this Marquee is actually embedded about 1/16 of an inch in the sides, down and up. It's really nice. There's absolutely zero light bleed. The light diffusion is extremely good, and it doesn't hurt that my print looks really good, because you can see how there's zero washout on my print. This was reverse printed on acrylic that I did. Same as the original. Now we're going to pull the original out. So now we're going to be able to compare. This is what the machine came with. And you can see the length right here? See how much longer on this side? So split that in half, and it's that far in on both sides. And if you hold it up, you can see it's about equal amount, completely sandwiched inside. So what I did was I took the same logo, I scaled it slightly different. I added obviously Ronald McDonald, and now on the 2 slot, not the 4 slot, but on the 2 slot game, the original cabinets, they did have a white border, so I put that back in. So that's what I did on that. Now that's the original version. A couple other Marquees, like I said, this is the original. Now, originally, I wanted to do a 4 slot with alternative Marquees. I wanted to be able to make these interchangeable, but these Marquees are not the simplest thing to switch out frequently. So I figured I'm going to do a couple designs, and they're going to be stagnant Marquees. So this particular one is Samurai Showdown. But what's cool about this, it's carrying one artwork, that's one image all the way across. One has the directions here, it shows you. So it just is a nice alternative look. And then this one is Metal Slug. So we got Metal Slug 1 here, 2, X, 3, 4, and 5. And you can see the detail on all these. So these will be available on my website. This one, and the Ronald McDonald. Get a Happy Meal with it too. All right, so we talked about the different materials that are used in the arcade industry from way back. Let's start from the beginning. So let's go back to the 80s. Let's say a Midway, a Pac-Man, or something like that. They used actual plywood, and this particular piece of wood is a piece of birch plywood. Now this is a higher grade birch because this has a lot of plies. This has normal double plies than a normal piece of plywood. If you look at this piece of plywood here, you can see the difference. This has got double the amount of plies. So in a cabinet, like a high-end cabinet in your house, this is going to be more stable. There's going to be less knots. It's just a better quality. This isn't really 100% accurate to the core that would have been used. Picture the face of this. This is just raw wood. It's smooth. It's not quite straight up plywood because it is a smoother surface than that. It's a higher grade, but it is a plywood core. Now, this was great, but the problem with this is, as you can see, it needs to be primed and painted. If you just try to stick vinyl straight over this, it's not going to be great. And if you wanted to paint it, let's say the Pac-Man or something years ago, they did stencil painting. They didn't just paint over the raw, they primed it and then they painted it. So this is your birch plywood. So one of the most common panels is going to be just particle board. All of the Konami, I would say 85% of the arcade cabinets in the past were just straight particle board. So what we have here is an X-Men. This is an original X-Men Konami cabinet, and the overlay on this was a very heavy material that you could see. It's not like a vinyl, so it would have like a 3M adhesive on the back, and it's very rigid. It's not like a regular vinyl. Now the issue is, if you were to try to remove this, as you can see, you start to bring up particles of this panel with it. So that makes it a lot harder to refinish this. This is definitely more dense than the particle board that you see in melamine, but it's not as dense as MDF is. So I'm going to flip this over. So if we compare these, this is not as dense as this is, and then this is more dense. So you can see the difference. This will not come with a finish. But this is very rough to just put vinyl on. This is definitely a step up, denser, less dense with a finish. Then you have MDF. This is medium density fiberboard. So this is a solid, almost a solid core. You can see it's basically just sawdust compressed. Really tightly though. It has a very, very smooth finish. The issue with this again, now there are guys that put vinyl straight over this, but if you look closely, you see how this gets hairy? So if this stuff gets wet, it's instantly gonna swell. You should really at least prime this. Sometimes what I've told guys, because some people are like, oh, I just go over top. If you're gonna sand this really, really smooth and make it dust free, you could get away with applying vinyl to this. The issue is, if you stick vinyl on this and then you come and try to pull it off, let's say you didn't get it exactly where you wanted, you 100% take a risk of bringing up little particles of this onto the back of your vinyl, therefore making the vinyl, you're compromising the adhesive on it, and then it's not going to stick as well as it would have the start. So if this was primed and painted and then vinyl stuck on it, if you had to remove it, you're not taking the risk of bringing these particles of this board up. So this is MDF. Now we have MDO. Some cabinets, this is a much more expensive alternative. This is really used in the sign industry. I've been using this material for over 30 years. So MDO stands for medium density overlay. And what's nice about this has a veneer finish. Now you can buy this in primed and unprimed. You can also buy it in single-sided or double-sided. So you could have this as raw and this side primed. You could have this as completely raw plywood and this side smooth and primed, or just smooth and not primed. So there's alternatives to this. But what's really nice about this is you have the strength of plywood. You have, and this is much lighter than, now this is granted, this is 1/2 inch and this is 3/4, but this is a lot more dense. So this is lighter, and this is not going to absorb moisture like this will. Eventually it will, but if you sat both of these in a cup of water and come back the next day, this is going to double in size. If not double, at least 30 to 40% increase in size. This will not. So this is like a sponge. Now the issue with both of these are they got to be painted. But the advantage of this one versus this is you already have a primed surface, and you don't have to deal with all these particles coming off because it's already done. However, this is going to cost twice the cost per sheet than this will. So that has to be considered. So if I do a high-end build for a customer, this is what we're going to use. But I still do have to spray it. Now, I do have a spray booth in my shop, so we're going to spray these with a polyurethane satin finish, and then you can put the vinyl over it. Okay, another really common material is melamine. Now you can see, you can get these in Home Depot. This is basically just, some people call it granola board, particle board. It's pretty heavy. The good thing about it is, as you can see, it has a finish to it. It's done. There's no painting needed, but this is very porous, and the downfall on this is right there. This chips in big flakes. So if it starts to chip, like milling it, machining it, the edge, the bottom edge of a cabinet, a lot of Capcom big blue cabinets, a lot of games are still made with this, or were made. Not so many cabinets are even made anymore, but they were made with this, and if they were taken care of correctly, they could look good. But once they started getting beat up, this is a problem, because you can't repair this very easily. Because this is a Formica type of finish, how would you fix this and not see it, other than repainting over this? And this isn't the best thing to try to paint over. It's not going to adhere very well. So you'd have to completely sand this down and then paint over this, which is kind of defeating the purpose of even having this finish to begin with. So can it be done? Yes, but it's not the best alternative. And this too will swell once wet. This is a very inexpensive alternative. But the Arcade 1-Up, the Legends, this new MVSX, they do not use this because of this not having a solid core. This is not the best choice because of the chipping ability. So these things get beat up, it's done. Next, we're going to move on to MDF with a laminate. Now this is kind of best of both worlds. So we have the solid core, unlike this. So you have the secure finish of a solid panel with the Formica type of surface. Now, in the United States, you cannot buy, at least to my knowledge, and I've researched it, you can't get it in 1/2 inch. That comes from overseas, and 1/2 inch is what all these 3/4 cabinets are coming in, not 3/4. This 3/4 inch material is not even a stock item. So I have a panel supply company that I deal with that I had to have these custom made. This is not cheap to get done, but this is done at a factory. This is laminated on both sides with this vertical grain laminate. It's thinner than if you went and bought vertical grain. It's much thinner, but it's professionally pressed on. There's no imperfections. You buy this in a 4x8. This is kind of challenging to machine though. Like if you have a CNC router or even a hand router, this is at 3/4 inches. This can wear out some bits. It'll burn some bits up. But the nice thing about this is once it's cut, it's a lot more difficult to chip than per se this is. And there's no painting except the edge. Now, if you put T-molding on here, you're done. It's golden. So the question is, what do these new cabinets use? They use this, but in 1/2 inch. So if you take a look, you can see you have a really nice surface that does not need any paint. You can see this is the taped on edge, but it's solid. Now what's cool about this back door and this top, this is only a 1/4 inch version of that. So you can buy something very similar to this at Home Depot. It's one-sided. It's got one side finish, and then the other side is just the raw MDF. It's great for something like this because you don't need both sides to have black on it. But unfortunately, like I said, in 1/2 inch, you can't find it in the United States. So that is a little summary of the different materials that are used on cabinets from the past and up to today now. Credits. All right. Whoa! What you got? Hello. Hello. All right, let's do it. Get out of here with that little stick. You don't want none of this. Oh, all right, you're funny with me? Come on with that stick. Yeah, that was close, but I got her. Get the fist. Oh, that was nice. There's plenty of games on here to keep you satisfied for sure. I feel that it's a good collection. And what do I think overall about this cabinet? I think that the gameplay is really good. I don't see any hesitation. I don't see any lag. I don't see any input lag. It's backed by Neo Geo, which is really good, having all these games licensed. I think that for the money, I know building personal arcade cabinets myself, you couldn't even buy these components yourself to make these. Let's talk about the controls. For the average gamer, they're 100% fine. For a die-hard fighting fan, you might want to upgrade the joysticks. It's not 100% necessary. Let's face it, if you're super diehard, you're probably going to have a full-size original Neo Geo cabinet. But for the average person that just wants to play these titles that never could have a Neo Geo in their house, this is more than sufficient for that. Same goes with the volume. You can nitpick every item if you wanted to, but as a whole, overall, I think it's really a nice unit. And I will be buying one myself and adding to the collection. Even though I do have an original 6-slot at my shop. That thing is a monster though. It's a beast. And this is nice to be able to have all these in one little platform like this. And as we all know, Neo Geo has a pretty big following, so I can't see these not selling very well. And one thing I wanted to also touch base on is there's room in the market for all these different companies. It's not like one to sit there and say, well, this is better than that and that's better than this. I feel like there's a market for all of them. Think about in the arcades back in the day, there wasn't, like Atari didn't say to Midway or anybody like, oh, they're junk. I mean, maybe they did, but the bottom line is the arcade was full of all these different games. And the same goes for these companies. There's these different companies coming up now that they're doing these 3/4 scales, and there's a market for all of them. I feel like every one of them has their strengths and weaknesses, and I own all of them, and I don't think that there was a fear to some people that all these 3/4 scale cabinets hurt the arcade community. But in my opinion, I don't think it does, because I feel that it has brought attention to a lot of people about games that they may have only remembered or never even played in their life. Now I know, and you know yourself, let's say you were a young kid. Back then, the arcade was the only choice you had to play these games. Can you imagine being 10 and 12 years old and being able to have one of these in your home? We didn't have that choice. But that's just amazing for today's youth to be able to experience these things in their homes. I think it's priceless. And I think that it's brought so much more attention to people wanting to go out to arcade locations that are out there still. All these barcades and different arcades that have, you know, play as you go, or some of them still have credits, you know, quarters. But I just think that it has just brought the community overall together. The modding community in all these is really big now. I think that's also cool to see the different projects that people come up with. And this cabinet isn't going to be any different. There's going to be some modifications. As you can see, I already started with the Marquee. I just think if you're an avid gamer, I can't see why you wouldn't want this. But it's just like consoles. You know, you got your diehard Xbox guys and you got your diehard PlayStation fans. But if you're a true, straight up diehard gamer, I feel that you can't really just pick one, because they all have their weaknesses and strengths, and in the console world, they have different titles that are exclusive to different cabinets. So let's take Arcade 1-Up. Arcade 1-Up, to me, they pretty much have done it where they're bringing all the nostalgic back of the cabinets themselves. Like, you could see a Miss Pac-Man, you could see a Burger Time, you can walk into a room and experience all these different cabinets and create your own little mini arcade in your game room, and they're licensed. So my hat's off to them, and they pretty much have started this new trend with the 3/4 scale, and they're still coming out with great titles all the time. So my hat's off to them, and I think they overall have done a really, really good job. They listen to the community. They always got new innovative things. You just saw they had the infinity table. They started showing that. I thought it's pretty cool. So let's go back to another game. So that's the one up. Then we'd look at the Legends. So Legends theory is more, let's make one cabinet that just can play everything on it. Now the cabinets are built really well, and their thing is if you buy one machine that can do it all. Now that works well. There's a market for that too. I actually own 2 of them. I don't have any problem with the Legends cabinets as well. They constantly update their firmware, and people have in the community have added games, and there's leaderboards online. You know, they have a great cabinet as well. Then you have II Arcade that has not come out yet. So I'm looking to get my hands on one of them. I did order one of those. So he has another approach to it, more modern games, you know. So I don't want to say too much about them yet because I don't have my hands on one. And now you have this Neo Geo. So the Neo Geo is really unique because Neo Geo is its own thing. So even if you had a whole room full of arcade one-ups, you had an II Arcade and you had a Legends, still wouldn't mean you wouldn't want a Neo Geo cabinet, because you're not going to get these games in any of those other places. Now granted, on the Legends cab you can play some of these games, but it's nothing like walking up to this that looks like a Neo Geo arcade, and these are all licensed games in here exclusive to Neo Geo. I just think it's really cool. I like the idea of having the base separate if you want it to be. Let's say you want to go somewhere and you want to just have it on the counter. It's a nice feature to have. If you want to have it standing up next to other cabinets, then you can have the base. So it's a cool option to have, and I don't see anything wrong with it. So guys, the bottom line is there's room for everyone, all these competitors. I think that, I don't know how well they all get along with each other, but I think there's plenty of room out there for all the different competitors, and I support all of them. I feel that everyone should, and it just keeps the community even more fulfilled with titles and games that everybody wants. Guys, well, I had an absolute blast making this video and this review. I think that overall this cabinet is really great for the value, and it's definitely something that you will see in my game room in the future. But beside that, we're going to be having some new options, some side art options, that front plate like I told you before, probably a bezel. I don't want to go crazy because Neo Geo was known to be a very clean look, so you don't want to go nuts with stuff all over the place. And see those 2 white buttons? They're also going to be a cool thing that in the future, when you can add more games, you'll be able to have all 6 buttons. So that's going to be a cool thing to be able to look forward to. So I was honored to be a part of this in the community, to be able to showcase this. I appreciate that my wife came in for this to help me out, and I just really thank everyone that made this happen, and I look forward to the next reviewer. And guys, as always, thanks for watching. Until next time, I will see you then.